library commissioners. And for the first year, we're actually able to purchase a lot of the material that currently takes up our citizenship area. So we were really able to revamp that area on the second floor of the library now. So we are now stocked with citizenship material, from books to the furniture that we needed to make that area really expand to where it is currently today. So now with the second amount that's being presented, we're going to use that amount to market that area currently. And we also have some funds within that amount for consultant fees. We're working with the International Institute of Greater New England, I believe, in Lawrence, and we're working together with them to put on some webinars for the upcoming year, and just continue really pushing the citizenship corner. So for anyone watching, if you are working on your citizenship exams, we do have all of our material in and ready to be checked out.
Excellent. So I answered my own question here. The LSTA stands for the Library Service and Technology Act.
Correct.
And you said this is the second one. So we already have something in place. Is that right? We already have.
Yes. So we were here actually last year for the first amount, which was $7,900. So this is a total of a $15,000 grant.
So my question is very brief on this. I think it's fantastic that we are doing what we can to support the kind of movement that we have to really bring people into the full privileges and rights of citizenship, and getting into that point where they're going to do well on the tests and the exams, right? So that's fantastic. How many people are actually like in the pipeline taking advantage of this so far?
So because right now we're still revamping that area, the year two portion, unfortunately with everything going on with the pandemic, we had to kind of push back and slow down a little bit on what we were able to do with our timeline. So with the time that we had, we were just really making sure that we had all of our materials in and everything we really needed to really promote and push. So right now we're ready to really tell the world that we are ready to get our stuff checked out, and it's, there for use. So we're at that stage now where we want to promote and really inform the community that it is available to them. So we don't really have I don't have a number or anything right now, just because of the fact that we just finalized or close to finalizing our area for us to really promote, which is where we're at right now.
And so and before I open up to other questions, and I'm just excited about what you're trying to do here. We're looking at, you've got to be physically at the library. We don't have the ability, if I understand this correctly, so far, this is not in a position where we're able to do this remotely. You really have to go to the library, get the materials, and immerse yourself. Is that what we're talking about here?
So you can also check out these materials through curbside services as well. So anything that is in the system or in the catalog can be checked out. So it would be along the same services that we're doing now. So if there is a citizenship item or something that you need us to copy or scan or anything like that for you, just give us a call at the library, and we'll be able to get everything that we need ready for you to have picked up at curbside.
Great. I'm set with my questions. Are there any members of the committee have questions or a motion?
Motion to send it to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion?
I would just like to add that we are also working with the Adult Learning Center as well, definitely to give them the credit as well, and the USCIS representative there who's really helping us with also the citizenship class that's also tied into this. So I just wanted to make sure that I noted that as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. At this point, I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mr. Abdu?
Yes.
Mr. Payano? Noted. And the chair votes in the affirmative. The motion is sent up to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Thank you very much, Ms. Abdu.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
Have a good night now. The next document is document number 233. This is the acceptance of a municipal vulnerability preparedness grant that was put on the city council agenda by Mayor Dan Rivera. Is there anyone here to speak on this matter?
Councilor, this is Brian Pena, Acting Director of Public Works. I'm here to speak on this agenda item.
Welcome, Director Pena. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So first and foremost, what I want to do first is just clarify the verbiage in the agenda. currently reads acceptance of the grant. I just want to clarify that the city has accepted the grant at this point. What we are seeking is authorization to expend the grant funds, which is very similar to all the other grants that you have in front of you tonight. So this grant is allocated for a project to complete a flood study and develop an adaptation plan for the city's DPW yard. As I'm sure all of you know, the DPW yard located at 1 Auburn Street is entirely within the 100-year floodplain of the Spicket River. DPW yard is a critical facility for public works operation and emergency management throughout the city. So, what I say is, when catastrophe hits, people look at us to respond, and as a result, we need to make sure that our home is, as much as feasibly possible, immune to catastrophe. If you recall the Mother's Day floods of 2006, where half the city was underwater, unfortunately, that meant the DPW yard was underwater. So while DPW staff were all out helping people out of their homes and finding a safe harbor, the DPW yard was under several feet of water. And it wasn't until days later, when we finally were able to go back to the yard, that we started taking care of our own mess. So the idea with this is to develop a high-res flood model, essentially to gain an understanding as to how the Spicket River floods and how it impacts the city. And then once we have that data, develop a plan to mitigate flooding. So by whatever means necessary, whether it's physical barriers, whether it's more detention areas, or whether it's things like stop logs on all of the doors, elevating some of the critical facilities so that they do not get flooded. All that will come out of this study. Let's see. The amount of the grant is $213,418, and it is a grant that is provided by the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs of the Commonwealth. And with that, I will open up to any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Pena. So my quick question is, we're looking to get a study done. Now, that looks like a lot of money. At $213,000 for a study. Can you just give me some context? Is that like the norm? Is that more than the usual study? Is this got more bells and whistles, or is this a standard amount that we look for a study of this nature?
So that's a great question. It's within based on the scope, it's within the correct range. This is something that has never been done in the city. We do not have a full depth understanding of the flooding impacts of the Spicket River. So there is a lot of data collection that needs to take place. There is a lot of surveying of critical facilities within the city. So there's a lot of legwork that has to occur in order for us to develop this model. So we anticipate it's going to be hundreds, thousands of hours, essentially, of engineering time that's going to be put into this.
And my last question, because this provides context, is it just the DPW yard, or is it all along the Spicket River?
So that's also a really great question. So when we applied for the grant, we applied for it specifically for the DPW yard. But as you can imagine, that data is going to serve as a foundation for future studies. So we're going to be able to use this data to guide in decision making and protecting any other assets within that flood zone, including some of our private partners. So think of Mary Immaculate, which is right next to the DPW yard. This data, we would certainly be open to sharing it with some of our private partners.
Okay. I'm done with my questions. Any members of the committee wish to ask questions or make a motion?
A motion to send it to the full council with a final recommendation.
Second.
Motion made, second. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mr. Abdu?
Yes.
Chair votes, Mr. Piano? Chair votes in the affirmative. 3-0 sent up to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. Appreciate it.
Thank you, councilors.
Next item this evening, document 23420. This is an order authorizing the expenditure of the CARES Act CDBG CV3 for $935,531 put on the council agenda by Vilma Martinez Dominguez, the Community Development Director. Ms. Martinez, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, counselors. So this is the third wave of CDBG COVID funds that the federal government has issued. It was initially $5 million. The first two, $5 billion. The first $2 billion were released in March. $1 billion was released then in May and was mostly for states. And then this is the last of those $5 billion that was released in September. And it came to entitlement communities and states. And Lawrence, based on need and formula, received this amount, $935,531. This funding basically, it could be used for different things, but we have had our ear to the ground, have been meeting with nonprofit groups, have been getting calls from residents, service providers, and actually even held a town hall with the mass trial courts to better understand issues that were bubbling up. And based on that and their concerns over residents losing income and their inability to pay the rent, and looking at the anticipated wave of evictions across the state, I guess it is estimated there's going to be around 20 to 22,000 evictions come January. And Lawrence, given our situation and demographics, really we looked at these funds and decided to allocate the funds to support legal assistance and legal representation, as well as a short-term rental assistance for families who are at 80% or below the area median income, which is a little higher than typically is awarded through other reliefs. So this is how we're going to do it. We split it evenly between those two services, and minus obviously the small admin fee that we're charging for this grant. So as far as the short-term rental assistance relief, we're looking at probably just 3 months or $6,000. I think that's what we're looking at. Whichever is less, it's less the amount. To alleviate the housing burden for low-income households, it has to be households who have been impacted or lost income because of COVID. So for instance, if a family was laid off or reduce their hours and that reduce their income, or they don't have paid leave to take care of their children because of school or whatever, for whatever reason, or they have to self-quarantine and then they lose income, or any other consequences because of the virus that led to this reduction of income. So that's sort of the group that we're looking at. Obviously they need to have proof of financial hardship in order to qualify. And we're looking at probably assisting between anywhere 30 to 40 families with these funds. A little different from the ESG. ESG is really for families who are lower income, and that has a different set of requirements. And then the part for legal aid, we've been in conversations with Northeast Legal Aid. And basically what we want to support is increased staff capacity to be able to support our families through and as well as litigation costs. So they're looking at maybe 4 full-time attorneys and 1 full-time paralegal. They're looking at assisting approximately 398 clients, be it individual eviction representation or mediation, or any income maximization. So a lot of the work that they do is really work around securing benefits that families may not know they're eligible for, or they be fighting for, any restitution damages, things like that. So seems to be like the right thing to do. Where are we in the process? Basically, like the other funds, we have to do a substantial amendment to our current fiscal year annual action plan. So that's already up and posted on the city website. I also posted it on a Facebook page, and the waive the citizen participation to 5 days just to expedite this. So some things need to happen still, but this is what these funds will be utilized, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. So, Mike, I got a lot of questions. I'm going to try to streamline them.
Okay.
We've been talking about this now since March, since it's been a while. I think do you think our third round of funding? I think is what you said, right? I think that's accurate, or something like that.
For CDBG, for the city, it's the second round.
Okay, thank you. So when we were first going through, we were really concerned about the eviction rates. We're really concerned. Did the evictions rate meet our concern projections? Did they go as bad as we thought they were going to when early on in the year when we were really ramped up?
So the eviction moratorium was helpful, both the local and the state. I know that there's still one that it's CDC at the federal level, but I'm not certain if I think there's restrictions around it. What's happening right now is that they're looking at probably the beginning of the year, so people could still file them. They're just not being there's no court processes now. But once that kicks in and the end of the year ends, comes to an, I mean, this year comes to an end, I think that they're anticipating a huge wave coming, especially for us. And what's interesting is this, there was some funding that was made available through the state for legal assistance, I think 12.3 million. And there's about, I think 6 organizations that provide legal aid throughout the state. But Northeast Legal Aid, whatever funding they receive is for the entire region. This is going to be able to allow us to serve Lawrence families with these funds. So yes, it is anticipated to be really bad. Right now, just so you know, we finally enter into contract for the ESG funding with Community Action Council in mid or late October. And as of yesterday, there were 501 applications to be processed. Mind you, there's only 100 funding for probably 175 of those families. Obviously, there's other resources, RAFT and IRMA. What we're trying to do is just make sure that we support the families to the point that it avoids sort of these evictions happening. And there's certain agreements with landlords that support, our goal is to keep families home, particularly during the winter time, during COVID time. So not sure about that.
No, it does. I'm going to quickly to this next question. I understand that the elements of this, generally speaking, big picture. We talked about legal assistance that we're providing. So when you say legal assistance, something tells me that there's wrongful evictions, that people are being thrown out on the streets wrongfully because now they're going to provide legal assistance to provide a defense so that they can counter that. Are we getting a sense that there might be? I mean. I guess I'm trying. Similar to my earlier question, are we anticipating that people are going to wrongfully evict people? One, second, I'm a little less concerned about the bigger corporate landlords as opposed to the mom and pop landlords who may have 110 or 210 own one building and they're reliant on this. And if somebody's not paying their bill, and this is not a wealthy landlord, they're just scraping to get by themselves. Are we also looking at their plight as well as they're trying to make ends meet as well? And they're reliant on that rental check? Can you talk a little bit about that and how this might affect that or impact that?
Sure. I mean, there's all kinds of situations happening. There are people who may be facing evictions. There are people who are already getting notices that their rent is gonna go up. There's people who may owe 6 months, 4 months, or there are people that may just be getting behind now. There's negotiation that could happen because what we're trying to do is do upstream work, right? Before it gets to the point where many of these families are facing eviction. That's what we're trying to avoid as well. It's not just to wait until they are facing eviction. It's also doing some of that prevention work that needs to happen. Just so you know, landlords have, not specifically for this, but for RAFT and IRMA, there's 2 other sources of funding under the Community Action Council where landlords could actually apply. Landlords that have 20 units or less could apply on behalf of their tenants. So that's the other option. I mean, there's so much information and what we find ourselves doing, and probably Legal Aid and many others like organizations like Lawrence Community Works, Arlington Community Trabajando, CAF, that they're doing some of this housing counseling and support right now. That's what they're seeing. They're seeing a little bit of everything. So we're hoping that this is going to sort of, it's not a lot, to be honest with you, but it will supplement what's coming from the state. It's going to help us sort of really target these resources to families who live in our city and also provide education and support and counseling and guidance and working with landlords and tenants and negotiation that sometimes you need an attorney to do those things. And so that's what we're hoping that's going to happen.
I'm going to stop with my questions and let other members of the committee either wish to either ask questions or make a motion.
I would like to make a motion to send it to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Rodriguez, seconded by Mr. Payano. Discussion?
Yes.
Mr.
So,
Rodriguez.
Ms. Martinez, are you guys working with on a specific list, or this set of funds are open to anybody that haven't applied before?
So we don't, specifically the city doesn't have a list. Many of these funds are subcontracted out so that programs and organizations that have the expertise and are already working with that population and doing that work could do the better work, right? Northeast Legal Aid, we're working, I mean, they have been part of many conversations, by the way. There's nonprofit organizations over 60, and we have several subgroups, working groups. One of them has to do with housing and financial stability, and they have been part of those, and so have other housing counseling organizations. So everybody, for instance, Lawrence Community Works has their own list of people that they're on a wait list that they are reaching out. And by the way, I believe that Lawrence Community Works had a pilot program with Legal Aid, Northeast Legal Aid, last year, where they were doing this prevention work to avoid, prevent people from being evicted. So it's almost going to grow from that effort, because it was a great pilot, but there was no funding last year to do it. I think that this gives us an opportunity to support people that are already on a wait list, but it's going to be first come, first serve, obviously. And Legal Aid obviously has their housing division that they have plenty of expertise, and they're already seeing people coming in already. They're already serving. This is just to expand their capacity to be able to offer their services at the volume that they need to be offered during this.
And what are the organizations that are helping out people with the rents? What
Right.
are those?
So that primary organization, it's a Greater Lawrence Community Action Council. They typically work with CTI, Community Teamwork in Lowell. They're one of the regional agencies that the funds get funneled through. And then they partner with Community Action Council to provide services. So this is not new to them. They've been doing this work for a while now. The RAFT a program they have been running for a while. Actually, when we had the families in the shelter earlier this year, we worked really closely with CTI and Community Action Council, with the state, MEMA, a whole bunch of different organizations to be able to place this family. So this is primarily the organization that does this work, just because they understand the system, they understand the requirements, and it makes sense just to partner with them.
So Greater Lawrence Community Action Council is the main organization. There is any other organization that is helping out with the rent?
Not to my knowledge, unless it's being done privately.
Say that again?
Not to my knowledge, unless it's being done privately.
I mean, but with these funds, have anything have been done privately? I mean, I don't think so.
This is a brand new, this CDBG, this is not ESG. So CDBG and ESG both need to be, families need to be either citizens or have some sort of a immigration status.
So basically, if I send people over to the Greater Lawrence Community Action Council, they're going to be able to help them with the rent if they're on if they get to the point of making the list.
Yes. So Community Action Council runs the RAFT, IRMA, which also includes mortgage assistance, and our ESG. This one, we're going to probably partner with a different organization, because the reporting requirements are not as stringent as those. So we may end up working with another organization that already does housing counseling in the city.
So what are you thinking? What other organization you might think?
The ones that could assist with this, it's 3 of them. And we already have our conversations with Lawrence Community Works, just because they have already an established partnership with Northeast Legal Aid. But Lawrence, Arlington Community Trabajando could probably do some of this work, could do it. Or Centro de Apoyo Familiar, or CAF. I think it's a faith-based organization, nonprofit that does some of this work. But other than that, I don't think anyone else locally does this work.
Is the Centro de Apoyo Familiar going to help all the seniors?
I haven't established a contract with them. This contract, because it's so little money, we are deciding to partner with 2 organizations. Should there be any additional funding, which we anticipate will most likely come down the pipes, then we'll expand our partnerships to other organizations. But it doesn't matter. Let's say we establish a partnership or contract with LCW, and that's the organization we choose. Everybody will be then referred. They'll have people, families will have 2 places to call. They could call first the Community Action Council to see which of the 3 programs they're eligible for, or they can also work with this one. This one is just short term. It's like a one-time assistance. There's very little stabilization work that's required with this one because it's so short term. It's only 3 months.
I mean, when you mention Centro de Apoyo Familiar, they work a lot with the seniors. They are completely different organizations, the 3 of them. So
yeah, they are. And we do have a CDBG grant. Typically, they receive funding for the CDBG public services to support their work with the elderly.
no, I'm talking about the assistance to the elderly with that for the rent.
Oh, they could just be referred to whoever, whichever organization we contract with.
So essentially, we're thinking about 2 organizations, LCW and Intercommunity Trabajando. Most likely.
The city probably and the community will benefit from partnering with one organization because it's not a lot of money.
Or it's $1 million.
It's $935. We have to reduce the administrative fees from both organizations. So each of those institutions will get $397,600.
Okay. All right. So for this set of funds, it's not Greater Lawrence Community Action Council. It's most likely going to be one of the Lawrence Community, either Lawrence Community Work or Alinto Community Trabajando. Correct?
Yes.
All right. I just want to get my numbers straight. I mean, my in case we need to refer anybody, we know where to refer. Otherwise, they're going to be sending that to the 12 Methuen Street, and it's not the case.
It's been happening, just so you know. Anyways,
I know. I send people over.
Staff has been just either helping, directing, and to be honest with you, at the volume that those raft applications are coming in, what we ended up doing, our nonprofit group, the nonprofit that I belong to, is do trainings to build a capacity among nonprofit organizations to help with those applications. It's to that point.
All right, and they probably do not have at least anybody that can that goes after the contract is signed is going to have a chart to the money, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I said that they don't have an actual list already waiting for the funds. So if we send somebody over to be able to take advantage of this, the fact that the contract haven't been signed yet, they're gonna have an opportunity to apply for the funds.
To be honest with you, there's already a list that's been building at these organizations of people just reaching out, looking for assistance. And so what they've been doing is working and referring people to wherever, Community Action Council for legal assistance, for food, for whatever it is that's needed. So my guess is that there's already lists that exist there, but that's a conversation to be had because I think we want to be able to open it up and make it,
Yeah, I mean, that's not a fair process, to be honest with you, because I mean, anybody that is listening to us tonight, they might waiting for this information and they don't even know where to go until we sign a contract and this already at least been built up. I mean, I think that the list should be 0 people. Once we sign the contract, start taking new applications to have a fair process for everybody.
Agreed. And what we have been doing with all the funds that we've been receiving is doing press conferences and adding information onto the city website so that people can go access information there, or if people call our line, we always refer them to the right locations, so.
Because the thing is like looking at from the point of view of the city councilors, we're gonna be sending people over, right? Today. But today there is no contract signed with them. So it's not fair for them, but we don't know when you're gonna sign the contract for us to be able to send over people. But once you sign the contract, it's already a list. So I think that it should be more like, people are struggling. A lot of people are struggling, and they're reaching out to different entities, including the city council institution, which basically gonna expecting a hope from us. So the only thing we have is to refer them to different programs that are available, including this program, which is so important, so much people waiting for it. So
Yeah,
I
and
hope that things are not, that list is not quite extensive, or there is no list at all, to be fair. And by the time that you sign up a contract with them, you can actually share that information with us, and that way we can share with the people to know exactly when those funds are going to be available to those organizations.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to happen still, part of the process the HUD requires. So I don't think that this is gonna be up and running probably until beginning of the year.
Beginning of the year.
Yeah, by the time we finish with the citizen participation, we upload information to HUD. HUD has to review it. Then they have to, if there's any changes, they'll let us know. Then they finalize the plan, and then they send the grant agreements. So everything has a process with HUD.
All right. I hope that you can share with us when you guys are going to have a signed contract, and that way we can actually refer people to those organizations, and they can take advantage of those funds. $6,000 is a big help, knowing the fact that a lot of people making less than 40,000 a year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this matter?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Piano?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vilma, for your presentation. Would it be possible to send us sort of like the contact information for whoever is running, Irma, and what was the name of the other program that you said? And Raft. And as well, I'm interested, as Councilor Rodriguez mentioned, I think that there's a lot of need out there, and sometimes members of the public contact us. One of the unfortunate things is that there have been times where, I feel like I might not be as up to date as possible with what the city is doing in respects to some of the support that we're offering people. And while I do send them along to folks that I think could answer those questions, if I'm able to save them a phone call, I definitely would appreciate that. So if there's any, besides those two programs, if there are any other programs that you or the members of your team feel like it would be important for us to know, like the names of those people, like links where people can apply to, I'd be greatly appreciative of that information.
Absolutely, Councilor Payano. We actually uploaded the information onto the city website in addition to Greater Lawrence Community Action Council. There's also a fact sheet that has questions and links and information. I'll be happy to share that with the council tomorrow.
I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. If there's no further questions or comments, we'll call the roll. Mr. Payano?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mr. Abdu?
Yes.
And the chair votes in the affirmative. This document is sent up to the full council with a favorable recommendation. The next and final item on our agenda this evening, relatedly, is document 23520, and authorizing to expend Gateway Housing Rehabilitation Program grants from DHCD for the sum of $230,959, and this put on the city council agenda by Ms. Martinez. You've got the floor again, Ms. Martinez.
All right, great. So it sounds like we've been talking about this, and I have mentioned this in different occasions. I've been before City Council, and it's because we applied for this grant in October of last year. And it is the first time that Department of Housing and Urban and Community Development put together this Gateway Housing Rehab program grant. And the timeline was supposed to be by, we learned about it somewhere, in November, December, and it will start in January. And unfortunately, there was a significant delays. We learned about this grant and being awarded the funding in February of this year. And then COVID hit, and we didn't, and this is a one-year grant, by the way. And we didn't get our contracts until like late September. And so we finally are before you asking authorization to spend this grant. And basically what this grant is it was part of the Chapter 99 of the Act of 2018 and provide authorization for Affordable Housing Trust Fund monies to be expended on the rehab of 1 to 4 unit housing in gateway cities. And basically it targets units that have been either cited for building or sanitary code violations, or that are subject to commercial insurance cancellation due to substandard property conditions. So if you're looking at that, you're looking at distressed properties within the city. Under this grant, you can apply, they allocated $3 million in fiscal year 2020. And we could apply for up to 275, each gateway community could apply for up to $275,000. The city applied for and received $230,959 to support the deep rehab of 3 distressed properties. I mean, the money doesn't go very far, but we wanted to make sure that we used it wisely. 2 of those properties are located in the South Common neighborhood district, and 1 is in the Arlington district. So because this properties were identified back in, at the time we applied for the grant, 2018, chances are that we may need to revisit and some of those properties may change, because some of we just learned, for instance, that one of the properties was sold to an investor since last year. So, but we have a long list of distressed properties, out of which at the time we applied, there were 38 units were owner occupied. So we know that we can identify others. We were well positioned. This was a great opportunity for us to continue to tackle, quality of housing in our city. We were well positioned for this grant just because we had a long-standing housing rehab loan program through our CDBG and home programs. And so with these funds, you can spend $35,000 per unit or $75,000 per property. They're given away through a 0% deferred payment loan for homeowners whose income is at 80% of or lower of the area median income. And for those who go between 80 to 110% of the area median income, then they're eligible for a 3% loan with a 15-year 3% 15-year loan using a sliding scale repayment schedule. So we're investing other sources of funding here. For instance, we have committed $220,000 of our CDBG funds to support this program. And then $190,000 of those funds will go directly to the properties. And then owners also contribute a portion. So there's skin in the game here for them. So they're contributing around $190,000. So the estimated cost for all the rehab for those 3 properties is $600,000. So you can see that this is a very nice opportunity for us to address those really dilapidated properties that we have, where owners really don't have the ability to do the rehab themselves. So that's what the funding is for. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Sure.
Yes, I have a question.
Who has a question?
Giovanni.
Mr. Rodriguez, go ahead.
Vilma, now that that property in South Lawrence fall apart, that is no longer on the list, do you think that I can come to my district and pick up a property that is very distressed? I don't have any specific property, but something around. There is so many around here.
So The requirement from the DHCD is that we need to have a list from the Inspectional Services Department, a list of distressed properties that fit the bill. I'm pretty sure that we can go there and look at the list, what's there. I think that one of the properties already, we're looking at the Arlington district. I mean, the next one on the list is actually in the Arlington district. So we're looking at that property, but it all depends on the condition of the property, the estimated cost of the entire rehab, and how does it fit into the funds that we committed for CDBG and what's available through DHCD. So that's
There are properties here in my district that are actually on the housing court because of so many code violations. So if you look into it, you're gonna find a lot of different properties out here that
yeah.
are not up to code. They need to be definitely up to code. I don't have any specifics because that's not how I advocate, but I definitely would like those funds to move forward to this side of the city. I mean, not my district.
So one of the things is that to keep in mind that 80% of our housing, it was built before 1978. So there's a bulk of properties right now who need a lot of love. We try to target a lot of our resources and apply for grants like this to complement and supplement the funding and the work that we're doing across the city. And then Lawrence has a lot of properties, 2 times the number of 2 to 4 unit properties compared to the state. So a lot of things go into play. When we sat down to plan this grant, we worked really closely with the ISDs. One of the things that we're trying to do is to streamline our work and sort of coordinate better to make sure that we do more targeted work. So from the list, they have to be owner occupied. You can't imagine, I think there were close to 200 properties on the list, but only 38 at that point were owner occupied. So I hear I hear your plea. I think that our most densely populated section of the city and where housing is really poor quality, I want to say it's the Arlington district, but we want to make sure that that we're fair and we do this in an equitable and just way. So I will look into the list. I'm working with a team right now to see what are the other 2 properties that we need to look at. But I can tell you right now, there's one in Juniper Street that it's in really poor condition, and that neighborhood, it's just, needs a lot of love. So, but I hear you, and I will continue to work with the team to see what other units, other properties.
For the last 5 years that I've been on the city council, I keep on hearing the same thing about the Arlington district. Those data, they probably corresponds to the poverty on that side, but there is an Arlington district extension that is fall into my district also, that the poverty is greater on some areas of my district, and I would like to keep on. I'm gonna keep on pushing to be able to see those, because I mean there is areas here, Crush Street, all those areas around there that are worse than, and that's on District D. And you guys keep on looking at, Arlington districts, with all the respect to the city council president, but in my district there is a lot of poverty, and that whole area around there. You don't have to, you know it. You have walked around, and this is not only the Arlington district. You guys have to update those data, because Arlington is not the poorest anymore.
So point taken. On December, I'm going to send you the date. Usually in early December, when we have our public hearing for our CDBG funding, we provide a summary of how many, how we have invested our funds, and what neighborhoods those funds have gone to. Typically, we try to spread the love across the city.
Telling you, I've been a counselor for 5 years, and you know it. And it's the same story all the time. Arlington district. And then When it comes to housing, funds coming from the housing go to my college, Mark LaPlante, which doesn't support housing at all. But I'm being blunt tonight. So that's the reality.
Mr. Rodriguez, I really wish you would just focus on the topic rather than trying to compare yourself to
No,
other.
but I mean, that's the truth.
And I don't know what I have to do with anything regarding this particular project this evening.
No, it's not about this project. Vilma know what I'm talking about.
Council, there was really no need to bring this into the conversation. You
All right.
certainly were going down a right way. You're fighting.
Point
Councilor
well
Rodriguez,
taken.
you were
Out
fighting-
of
Councilor
order.
Rodriguez, you were fighting for your district, and for that I can appreciate that. You're a district councilor and you're doing the very best you can to get monies and attention. To that I can certainly respect that. There really is no need to.
Point well
make-
taken. Out of
There
order.
really is no need to make an argument in my direction.
Point well taken. Out of order.
Is there any other members of the committee who wish to have comments or make a motion? There's no motion on the
President?
floor at this point.
I mean, Mr. Chair, so I'd like to make a motion to send this with a favorable recommendation with further
Second.
discussion.
There's a motion made and it has been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Payano.
Thank you. Vilma, so I know, and I might have missed it. Can you go into either repeat or just go into a little bit more details as to how you determine what houses? I mean, I think I have a vague understanding, but is there like a rubric? Is there something that's standardized? I think, you know, I'm a big proponent that we need to treat the entire city fairly. I think that's very, very important. But I hope that whatever standards and with that, I hope that whatever standards we're using is something that is data driven. I think that the Arlington district is still the poorest district, not in Lawrence, but like in the poorest concentration in probably New England. But that's not to say that there are houses in Councilor Rodriguez's district or in other areas in the city that might not that might need that support. So I'm interested in sort of like how is there like a rubric? Is there like how do you guys pick the houses? Besides, or is it just sort of like sentiment? Like, you know, like you evaluate by I don't know. Can you go further? Like, give us more details on that.
Sure. So DHCD sets the standard how we select, because we needed to have already a list of properties between 2 to 4 units who had been cited for building or sanitary code violations that we had records for, and they were in substandard condition. So we had to really rely on the inspectional services department and their data, number one, and then compare that data to the distressed properties list that we already have running. And to be honest with you, these properties fit both lists. They were on both lists. The third thing is we needed to look at what was the amount of rehab that was needed that could be supported with both whatever we had in CDBG that we could commit to this project and up to $275,000 that we could apply. And then we had to look at how many of them were owner occupied. And then based on that, that data, we selected these 3 properties who according, and too bad Mr. Armano is not on tonight, who were already had been cited several times and the people living there were just living in deplorable conditions. That's how those selections were made. I don't think they were made specifically because we wanted to target the Arlington neighborhood, even though, to be honest with you, based on data, we know that it's not just the Arlington neighborhood. I think all the neighborhoods within the city, with the exception of one section of the city, are considered to be low income. They just happen to fall under those 2 neighborhoods, which is It's how we made our decision. You needed to have a list of properties already and select the properties before you even apply for these funds. So that's how that process went about.
Director, so how many homes in that final list, right? Like, so like that final cut that you guys chose those 3 properties from, how many homes were on that list?
At the time we applied that were owner occupied, there were 38 properties.
38 properties. Okay. And what compelled you, the decision makers to choose those 3 as compared to the other 30 that seem to meet all the other qualifications that you were looking for? Like, what set them apart from those other 30? Because it sounds like, you know, you're not necessarily focused on location, you're focused on individual properties. I'm just trying to figure out what makes those 3 properties stand out from all the other ones.
I can tell you that one of the properties, they were inspected and have had violations since 2016.
So would you say that is one of the points that sort of made a difference as to why some of, you know, those 3 properties were chosen was because they had more violations than the other, or because they've had more violations for a longer period of time? Is it that that there's more complaints? Like, so like what makes somebody on in the list of 30 stand out to at the top?
Again,
And if you don't have the answer, that's fine.
I was just gonna say again that Mr. Armano is not here. We relied heavily on the inspectional services team and also our distressed properties team.
Okay. So if possible, for this the city council meeting, if there's you know, if you could address that certain point, because I think, you know, Councilor Rodriguez brought a very good point, and I think you know, anytime that us you know, our residents, you know, they see a certain section of the city getting some support, you know, there's always, you know, in every community or in every neighborhood, you know, you're going to ask, oh, why aren't we getting that? So I think it would be important for us to, you know, make it clear, kind of like, how do you get, you know, why these 3 were chosen? So that way, if any residents ever ask that question, we could be as transparent, you know, us as counselors can be as transparent as possible, and show that this is something it's data driven, and it's not necessarily being driven by opinion's sake.
That's a very good point. I will dig further into to gathering more information, because I want to make sure that transparency is really what leads the process. We don't do any of our work without, you know, just specifically saying we want to go into this versus that. We're going to pick this versus that. Typically, there is some thought process and some data that we look at that help us make those decisions. So feasibility definitely is one of the things that help us get to that point. We have 12 months. That's the other thing. We have 12 months to do this deep rehabs, which is the other thing we had to take into consideration when we made those decisions. What kind of housing can we really identify here that's going to create an impact, that's going to be feasible, that we're going to be able to afford it and finish within 12 months? And one of those properties, you know, those properties that have been that are low income, because that's the other thing. The families have to be also low income. So there's several things that were taken into consideration when the decisions were made. We have 38 on the list. This is just the beginning. What we've been trying to do within the department since I arrived is to diversify the funding. So we typically have our entitlement money every year, home, CDBG, and other things. We know we meet, we come up with reports, we come up with plans. This is a way of us starting to implement some of those plans. Distressed properties, we're trying to address those. This was an opportunity for us to say, okay, you know what, let's pick 2 or 3 properties that we can address and start this process. Maybe there's another opportunity next year to apply for additional funding, but this was the first time around, and we made the best decision that we could make at the time with the data and the requirements and the funding limitations, restrictions that we had in front of us.
Yeah, no, thank you, and I think that makes sense. If also, if at some point you could, I'm not saying, but I would require this before the next council meeting. But if in the future you could, for the next round, let's say that for the next round, whatever that list is, I know that you guys are going to let us know the homes that you end up choosing. But if you could also let us know the sort of like the ones that made it to that final list, whenever it is that you guys choose that list. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it sounded from your presentation that there's going to be conversations as to what homes, because there's one that no longer is no longer part of the group. So you're going to be looking at one or two other homes that you might be able to fit in. Is that correct? Or yeah. So when I know that when these homes are chosen, you're going to inform the city as to that decision. Could you also inform us as to the other homes that made that, that top 30 or top 20, whatever is the list, that final list that you guys are choosing from?
So I will request a list from Inspectional Services Director Mike Armano. Hopefully I can get it before we meet again or before I go to full council and share it with you. But again, these are properties that we don't understand. We don't know what's the cost of rehabbing all of them. We chose 2 or 3 based on certain characteristics, certain indicators, following instructions, and then we actually had to send staff in to do the cost estimate. And based on that is when we'll say, okay, this is the one that makes sense. It's feasible, it's in poor condition, this family is in dire need, and that's how that decision is made. But before a council meeting, before the full council, I will get that list to you, and I will write down a list of the requirements or the indicators that we use to make the decision.
So yeah, so Director, not to put too much work on you. Like that list, I don't necessarily like. I'm not in need of that list before the council meeting. I do think that whenever the group of, whether it's 2 homes or 3, whatever number of homes are gonna make use of this grant, I think it would be important to also include the other homes that were a part of that final list. So that way, so that there's full transparency on that. And I would appreciate whether it's a blurb or through a presentation, either or, sort of more description as to how those 2 properties make it from that final list. Lastly, I want to thank you and everyone from the city for working on this. I think that those of us that look at some of these that to many they might look like small issues, which is there are several homes. I'm a believer of the broken window theory, in the case that if there's a neighborhood that has a lot of trash outside, that it's just there's a house that has a lot of trash outside that it's not well kept, that that the landlord is missing, that in turn brings blight to that neighborhood. And I think that that ends up multiplying. So I think that the work that you guys are doing is very key and very important, and I appreciate and value that work, that you're bringing money from outside, you're bringing it in to make that needed change. So I want to thank you and everyone else that works on this, because I think it's vital, especially as we continue to think of ways to move our city forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. At this point, if I don't hear any other comments, I'm going to call the roll. Mr. Payano.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez. I'll come back. Mr. Abdu,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
And the chair votes in the affirmative. The motion is sent to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Ms. Martinez, we will see you on December the 1st. That's a Tuesday. So thank you very much for your patience, your presentation, and your candor. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a good night. If there's no other items before the committee this evening, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Motion made by Mr. Payano, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Roll call, Mr. Payano.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Mr. Abdu.
Yes.
Chair votes in the affirmative. Thanks, everyone.